Tumblr made a noise immediately after I pressed the play button, so we'll see uh, how long this thing makes noises, basically. So today I'm doing like reSWAN and real life because I can, because it was because I brought it up and it was not something on the screen. Sorry, I brought it up and it was not like violently opposed to. So that's where I'm at. uh, yeah, so I put a lot of real life into this thing, even the first time around. It was just kind of what I did, I guess. I didn't think of having any particular reason for it. I wasn't trying to make any grand statements that I'm aware of. They could have been like subconscious or something, but I wasn't trying to do anything special. It was just, in some cases, it was just easier because it was real things in real places. So I wasn't dealing with like making up the geography of some place and then having to keep it consistent in my head and like make maps and shit. So it was better to say, okay, Edgar's house is my grandmother's house. Easy. There were a couple reasons for that. I guess like when I started to write it, it just kind of naturally came in. It wasn't that I sat there and was like, what's the easiest house to remember? Because you think it wouldn't be my grandparents' house. It would be like my mom's house, whatever house I was living in currently. Although at that point it was a dorm, so that's irrelevant. But you would think it would be something like that. But it was my grandparents' house, and I think it's because my grandparents' house always felt slightly like magical and weird and mysterious to me. Because I was very familiar with it, but I didn't live there. And there were parts of it that were usually closed off to me. So, like my grandparents' bedroom, I was very rarely in, and my aunt's old bedroom, I sometimes slept in, and then like my dad and my uncle's old bedroom, like I would get to like walk in a circle in there once or something and then leave. But I don't know, I had these very strange feelings of like not being allowed in certain places in their house. And at a certain point, my grandfather redid the whole basement, and that changed things in a weird way. It's not it's not the redone basement in SWAN. I took the house kind of as it was when I was like 10 years old. That just felt like a good time, because I think that was when like then and before was like the strongest impressions I made memory wise in the house. Everything that changed after that felt like a change, and I was frowny about it. So like that's all. A lot of stuff in that house is real, and in my grandmother's house. I like sneak pictures of it when I can, but I don't know how I would ever explain to my grandmother why I want pictures of her house. Like, where do I start? I don't know. So, yeah. But the pink recliner was real. It was in my grandparents' house for a while, and then it was given to my dad, so then it was in my house, and it was in our basement for a very long time, but it was the best recliner, and it was hideous. Yeah, pink recliner is real. The horse painting that Johnny throws out the window was a painting that my aunt did. I don't know when, but it was like she was in high school or something. It was a painting of like a little colt or something with a real like basic ass acrylic background, whatever. As a kid, capable of drawing like lumpy cats and alien people and like misshapen blood-sucking unicorns, this colt was like magical to me because it looked it looked to my child eyes like a fucking masterpiece, like it was expertly crafted, you know? I look at it now and I'm like, oh, it's a dorky little painting of a horse. But I mean, for lack of any other thing to directly have Johnny interact with, like that horse painting that had left such an impression on me. I'm like, okay, let's do this. The room that the book is in, which prompts Johnny to throw the horse painting out the window in the first place, was my aunt's old bedroom, so that's why it's in there. The room that Johnny himself gets to stay in when he is not staying with Edgar was my dad and my uncle's old bedroom, and there was not a whole lot like exciting in there. Like most of my memories of that room include like a weird finger painting that my dad did when he was like in preschool, and storage space for like all my grandmother's puzzles. That was it. So I don't, and that's kind of why there's nothing in the story about what is in like Johnny's room, because why? Like there was nothing in there in my memory to put there. So my grandparents also had like an ancient phone in their kitchen, and it was one of those ones like you pull the little like cone shaped thing in here, and then you're talking into the thing here. It's in a big like mounted wooden box on the wall. I don't know when they took it out because I don't remember it happening, but I remember it being there and thinking that that was hella fucking cool. So that was a thing. The school was just my high school because again that was very easy. I picked up my grandmother's house and I put it in the location of my childhood home because I lived 2 blocks from the school, and that made things very easy. Thus, I built kind of the rest of it around that basic geography. So the funeral home is real, and the funeral home parking lot where Jimmy lives is real. The trailer that he puts there is not, because it's a funeral home. and there aren't actually invisible blood spattered children everywhere. But the location is there. Debbie and Tenna's house isn't any particular house, but for some reason when I imagine it, I think about the house that was several blocks up from me in the opposite direction, that burned down. It was my friend's house in 8th grade, and the house burned down. Her brother died in the fire. Like the whole city went into chaos. It was some weird shit. Like that's the house that I think Debbie and Tenna have, even though it's the wrong direction, and I don't exactly know like where it sits on the block with the funeral home. But Pepito's house is my creepy grandfather's house on the inside. On the outside, it's the house that was really right across from the school, and this woman named like Georgie or Gina or Jerry or something, Jerry I think it was, she lived across the street. She was friends with my grandmother, which is a common thing. My grandparents were like super well known in this town for some reason, and literally every fucking where I went, if I wasn't my dad's kid, because they all knew him because he taught at my high school, I was my grandparents' granddaughter. Like everybody knew these people. So by extension, I had like a lot of old people who knew who I was, and I wasn't real sure how I knew them. And this lady was one of those people. She had a can in her backyard, and this is a story that I am sitting here now and cannot immediately recall if I put into reSWAN, but I hope I at least referenced it, and if I haven't told it in the story proper, I'm going to put it into one of those like background stories that I do later. But she had a nice backyard that was right along the route that my cousin and I used to walk to go to school, because the elementary school was just on the other side of the high school. So she had this can, just this tin can, sitting in the middle of her yard, and my cousin and I fucked around a lot on our way to school. We were real good at that. Something happened along the way that I got very responsible and would like freak out at the slightest hint of delinquency, but early on we were both just fucking off all the time. So we saw this can and we immediately ran up to it like, hey, we're gonna kick this can into her house. So we ran up and kicked the can, and nothing happened. It didn't move. So there was the tumbler sound. That lasted a long while. So we ran up and kicked the can. It doesn't move. And we're both a little startled by this. We're probably in like second or third grade, by the way. We both kicked it repeatedly. And until one of us finally had the brilliant and stunning third grade idea of picking up the damn can. And this person is persistent. So we picked up the can, and there's this giant like metal spike underneath the can. And it was only like at that point that we registered how much pain our feet were in from slamming into this thing at top speed for the whole morning. I don't know why. I don't know why a lot of things. I don't know why she had the spike in her lawn. I don't know why there was a can over it. Maybe the can just made it bigger so nobody stepped on the spike. I don't know where she was that she didn't hear a bunch of kids like yelling in her backyard about spikes and cans. I don't know. But that was real. So the bridge is real. The bridge in the school where you can see stuff, and I have photos of all of this because my dad works at the school. I convinced him in a way not unlike I may convince my grandmother someday to take pictures of the school and certain areas. I should put those up someday. Usually I just send them to people like with annotations and stuff written all over them like upon request. But I should just make a website or something and I just put them all up there. The roof is real, but like in two places. From my bedroom window when I was a kid, I lived on the third floor in the attic, because that's where you put your disappointing child. And I could see the top of the roof of the school. And I knew once I got to the high school where the door to the roof was. And I was kind of enchanted with the fact that it was on that weird bridge that I thought would just look fucking magical at night. It's less magical during the day because you can see like dumpsters and like parked trucks. But at night I thought, oh, if you can kind of ignore everything that's below it, it might look really nice and the roof would look even better. Well then, right as I was writing this whole story, I was starting my first year of college. And I think I didn't actually start publishing it until my second semester. But I was at the University of Pittsburgh, and there's a building that's kind of like the central focus of campus. It's called the Cathedral of Learning. It's this enormous goddamn building. I don't know, it's like 30 floors or something like that. It's absurd. I had my German class in there. I had a math class in the basement. You know, like everybody has a class in the Cathedral of Learning at some point because there is just so much goddamn real estate in there. But one of the things that like you weren't supposed to do in the cathedral, but we did anyway, I went up there a lot with people and just kind of like roamed the stairwells. I had a lot of like really deep, weird, emotional conversations with people like sitting in the windows up there. And it was during one of those that I found out that in the stairwell between the 15th and 16th floors, there was a window that you could squeeze through and get out on to the roof in between these two floors. It was like a maintenance roof. There were just some lights up there and like a big like air conditioning heating unit box. But mostly it was just a big empty space, a bunch of gravel down there, and like a big stone wall around it because the whole building, I mean, it was called the Cathedral of Learning because it aesthetically is very cathedral. So we're looking at like a stone facing on everything, like the rough weathered, like brown kind with like black in everything. Like it needs to be sandblasted, like that kind of thing. So I took a ton of my friends up there. We went up there all the time. And that was like, again, one of those like rare moments where I was like, screw the rules, I can do a thing. I was about to make like a Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged reference, and it hasn't happened to me in a long time, so that was like a weird experience just then. But yeah. So, I mean, we were up there, and I mean, I remember that semester I was living with this roommate who just was miserable to be with. Like, she was terrible, and I felt really constrained by the kind of person she was, and that she was never gone. So every time I came back, there she was. Every time I left, there she was. I never got away from her. And so I never felt like I could just sit and like have a good time and be myself. So I used to go up onto that roof, and like that's where I would go to like sing or just scream sometimes. You can really startle people down below if you just fucking scream like 15 stories up. It's cool. So yeah, I took all my friends up there, and we would have just like these magical experiences. And I remember so many of us up there, like arms extended and twirling, because it was just so goddamn great. And again, there's like some lights and some fixtures and an AC unit, but for us it was like, this is the magicalest fucking thing ever. Like, this window is open and it shouldn't be, and we're all squeaking out of here, and here we are singing songs and being mildly delinquent. I brought both my exes up there, and that's, I think, the experience of doing that, combined with finally being able to sing up there and everything, like that really solidified the roof in the story as like a magical place, and a place where Johnny went primarily with Edgar, because I liked being with my ex-boyfriend and my ex-girlfriend up there. Like, that was a really critical place for me. So related to that, then there was another building in the campus. I can't remember which one. Let's say it was, no, that doesn't make sense. I'll have to actually look at a map of campus and figure out which building it was. But in one of these buildings, there were a lot of like art installations and kind of weird things going on. It was, in contrast to the Cathedral of Learning, it was like a very modern building. So the second floor of the building had these big, like rectangular, just gaping holes in the floor. And so there's a whole wall of like glass windows on the one side, and it let all this light into both floors. And it let, like, you know, weird things hang from the ceiling and then go all the way down to the first floor, and architecture or whatever. So we would just walk through that building sometimes just to look at the weird shit they had hung up everywhere and like play around with it. There was something with like spinning pieces of a wall. You could be like an artistic Vanna White. I don't know, whatever. The point of this one is that I really liked those big holes in the floor. And there was one day that I was in there late at night with my ex-boyfriend, who actually had, there's a lot of him in Edgar. Like, a lot of the stuff I liked about that kid ended up in Edgar. And a lot of him physically, because he was tiny. There was like a piece of his sternum that you could see like all the time. Like, he was that thin, and I was particularly fascinated with his wrists. So I tend to draw Johnny's wrists the way I remember this kid's wrists. Here we are. This is all real life. Super exciting. Anyway, so I liked those holes a lot, and I went and leaned over one at some point, and back then I had like 3 feet of hair, and so it was all just kind of like cascading over the edge, and I think it made it look more dramatic than it was. I think to my ex-boyfriend it looked like I was just about to teeter over the fucking edge. Maybe he thought like 3 feet of hair was a bad counterbalance and I was just going the fuck down. But he freaked out and ran over to me like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I was laughing so hard, I just thought it was hilarious. And so I like leaned over it again, just barely, and he still had the same like completely frantic, instantaneous panic reaction. And he did it even if I just put an arm over. So I picked up that whole experience and I moved it to the roof and I gave it to Johnny and Edgar. There's a lot like this where I grabbed my boyfriend's reaction and I gave it to Edgar, and I gave my own thing, and here we are with Tumblr again. I am popular today. Yeah, so a lot of my own stuff ended up getting like transferred onto Johnny, which I think helps to really influence that whole like, oh, you're doing like a weird self-insert thing kind of stuff. But I don't know what, I mean, so like, I guess on the weird self-insert note, I tried for it not to be that. It's getting increasingly hot in here as I speak, so I'm putting out my hair. I tried for it not to be that, but, well, I mean, after a while I didn't care anymore. And it wasn't, I don't think it's like a blatant, it's not a blatant thing, and it isn't meant to be that. All of the homicides have something of me in them. That's just how that's gonna work. Like, I'm spending every damn day with these kids, you know, that's gonna happen. But like, I was trying to include like little callbacks to stuff, and like that kind of thing. Like, I wanted little like secrets and Easter eggs and stuff for people who knew a lot about like the Jonan verse, as it were. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna give Johnny Jonan's birthday, and that'll be like a cute callback. So I went and looked up Jonan's birthday. Turns out he and I have the same birthday. So I sat there like, all right, I was gonna try to make this like less obviously like lady exports all of her feelings directly into Johnny C, but now we have the same birthday, and I don't know what to do with this. I ended up just keeping it because I was like, well, it's Jonan's birthday. I don't know what to tell you people. Here it is. And it felt a little bit like when I was a kid and I was playing with toys, and like every single little plastic cat that I had, they all had the same September 1st birthday, and they all like it was like a weird friendly callback to the kind of playing that I was doing as a child, which really just, I'm just writing it down now. I think that's all that's happening. So I just let that go, because why not, you know? Other stuff that Johnny got from me is definitely like his particular brand of being asexual is from me, because I just felt like it was easier to do that than to try to like make up another configuration. And I mean, I did it especially for that to be kind of validating, even if just for me, because the first time I did this, several people were very adamant to me that they could not be having a real relationship unless they were having sex, and that it was in fact very important for them to know that these two characters were having sex. And at the time I didn't know anything about any of this. There was nothing, I mean, there were things different about me for sure. It was 10 years ago. But there was nothing about this that was different about me then. I just didn't have any of the vocab for it, and I, like so many other people, had conflated like the sexual attraction and like the aesthetic or romantic attraction. I thought, well, I've had crushes on people before, and I clearly like my girlfriend, so I'm obviously not asexual. And that's not how that works. But I was kind of almost trying, it was like I was subconsciously trying to express it to people, like, no, he's not really into that. And people were like, oh, but that makes him like cold and terrible and mean. And he was cold and terrible and mean for a whole bunch of other reasons. He didn't really need this to be why. But that's less like incidents and scenery. That's real life, I guess, and more just like character background bullshit. But it's there. There's a lot actually in Ish. There's that mayonnaise, which doesn't mean anything to anybody watching this, so I'll have to try to remember to do that for a comparative Ish video. But there's a lot of stuff that I did that was like when I moved to the town where I ended up just setting this, because again, it was easier geography wise. The neighbor girl used to take me for weird walks around the block and tell me all these weird ass stories. I don't know why. I mean, I was fascinated with it. I was on board, but they were all like mildly terrifying. And she gave me this feeling that like I had left the little town where I was like born and grew up, And now I was in the real scary world where there was something wrong with people. You know, like the bridge downtown. This one might have been in reSWAN. I can't remember. I feel like it was. But like there was a bridge going to downtown, and the reason that the inside, like when you walked under it on the pedestrian path, like the reason that the walls were kind of lumpy and stuff is because they had just like thrown a bunch of kids in there. And she was trying to show me this one that was clearly the shape of a sneaker, you know, like weird shit like that. Like, oh God. But I used a lot of her stuff. I either, you know, just in the creation of this whole universe, either as like bad stories that Johnny tells people or as real things that happened, because they were kind of both to me. Like urban legends and that kind of junk were extremely real to me as a child. I just completely believed people because I think I moved or entered a new phase of something at like precisely the right times that I never got a sense of being in a position of knowing. I was always kind of being dropped into a new place and having to rely on others to show me what was going on. And so I think that lingered for a really long time because it just kept happening like at the right intervals or something. So yeah, I believed a lot of these really weird stories and had all these really kind of bizarre mystical experiences in completely mundane places, which was something I tried to keep up during the course of doing all of this. Which is why it was like, oh, here's the magical experience of being in this on this maintenance roof, and here's the extremely sentimental feeling of this pink recliner. Because these are the bullshit things that I have around me. Oh, what other ones were there? I mean, I keep thinking of stuff from Ish, because I think that was when I started to really consciously incorporate a lot more things like that. But maybe since I can't think of any immediately, and we're nearing about the same runtime as all the other videos, I'll stop now and continue in a later one. Amazing.